Good day, I'm Tara Southey from TerraClim, CEO and founder. And today I'd like to discuss more about TerraClim specific to the Chenin Blanc Association and looking at Chenin Blanc intelligence. So TerraClim is a spun-out company from Stellenbosch University since 2022, underpinned by more than 20 years of research through the core research team and climate flagship project funded by South Africa Wine. I'm a qualified winemaker that went on to doing my master's and then my PhD, looking at the impact of climate change in the South African wine industry. It's very clear that climate is impacting the South African wine industry and all agricultural sectors throughout South Africa and the world. And a lot of my research identified that it's hourly data that's shifting in the context of climate change, and it's more seasonal variability that we face. And it's really important to start understanding what is your climate vulnerability. And that's really what this data and this intelligence aims to support. So Chenin Blanc intelligence, specific to this presentation, a TerraClim roadmap for field level climate insights, suitability and collaborative industry intelligence. And we are taking hands with different associations in the South African wine industry, and today to discuss the impacts that TerraClim could have with Chenin Blanc. Chenin Blanc, grown in South African soils, becomes a thing of great complexity and great beauty, but it's not by trying to emulate the Loire or anywhere else that South Africa's Chenin has found its own voice, and it's a remarkable cultivar that expresses its terroir so beautifully and holds itself on the shelf. So today's agenda, we are going to discuss an introduction to TerraClim, the Chenin Blanc overlap, a reporting overview for Chenin Blanc specifically, how you as a grower can access this data through a web app and admin access, how we aggregate the data that you've collected as a grower into a benchmark suitability tool, showcase a case study where this has worked, and then to have a close off. So as we start, TerraClim is a company that has been founded and is a spin-out from Stellenbosch University, founded on an immense amount of research funded by the South African wine industry. And we are aiming to address a global problem and the pain that it causes, which is food security and economic sustainability and economic resilience in the South African wine industry and agriculture in its general state, enabling climate smart action where it counts most, which is on farm, in field, real time. And this is where we aggregate farm level hourly data to inform better decision making. Because of the pain that we face in the agricultural sector, which is agriculture in uncertain times, no season is the same, high uncertainty from season to season, increasing climate variability, water scarcity and input costs, unpredictable diseases, pest outbreaks, pressure on yields, profitability, and then the global structure that keeps shifting and impacting agriculture first and foremost. At the moment, diesel prices, significant impact on our bottom line. So we are aiming to empower decision-making through data accessibility and data integration. So the solution TerraClim has created is a data-driven strategies where we integrate multiple data sets into a centralized environment, and we calibrate it and ground truth data to inform decision-making. This starts through key partnerships with weather station networks throughout South Africa that we centralize. And once we've centralized the data, we use the data to clean the data. We use geographic backfilling, we gap fill, we clean, and we collate to have a continuous climate database, which is needed for agricultural decision making. We integrate the weather station points on the left-hand side with a digital elevation model that we get in partnership with GeoSmart Space. And from these digital elevation models, we generate multiple layers on the right-hand side, and we do spatial interpolations, which essentially means we use the point data to create maps. So this is not the same as remote sensing. For every hour of the day, we have a temperature map, and then that's aggregated to daily, to monthly, and then bioclimatic indices. So what differentiates where we're at today as TerraClim is that we aggregate hourly data, and we link that back to crop insights. We then transition this information, hourly data set, a massive data set, into bioclimatic indices. Here's an example of chill units. As you can see, each season is a new season of chill, and you can see the chill variation over space. You can see the areas where there's high amounts of blue, high amounts of chill, and the lighter areas, less amount of chill, and that represents the diversity of crops in the Western Cape. The darker blue areas, higher chill requiring crop types like cherries, plums, citrus, and the lighter areas where we'd find grain, potatoes, and wine grapes. We then transition these maps into risk assessment maps, which is essentially a standard deviation of the seasonal variation. The darker red areas, you can see areas such as just above Piketberg, between Stellenbosch and Grabouw, whichever it's more red, which means the seasonal variability in that area is larger from season to season. So that means your season management will have to be more on the ball to account for the variability. Then we aggregate all of this environmental parameters, soil, climate, terrain, 44 environmental parameters into a centralized database where we start aggregating it with crop suitability. So where are crops winning and where are crops losing? And let's repeat what's winning. And we transition that into climate index maps that provides you with a spatial distribution of where should you plant what. So TerraClim solution, in a nutshell, we don't predict the future, we enable better decision making. And we do this through aggregating a climate intelligence platform that has data and context that gives us decision logic. So we go from observations through key partnerships, weather station networks placed strategically, aligned with World Meteorological Organization. If we see there's an underrepresented area and stations, we tend to speak to farmers and ask for collaboration to establish weather station networks. We have AI and quality assessment, climate services, and then decision supports. And through this, we can start looking at climate intelligence, which gives us answers as to where to plant what cultivar is viable, and what is the risk that should be managed now. TerraClim's products and services, all this data is aggregated into an environment that can be served either as a web app. We can serve this via API, so it can feed into other web app solutions in the agricultural sector to underpin and support agriculture. A suitability tool, which is key partnerships that we build across sectors, and then continued consultancy and research, a very strong underpinning leg of sustainability and stewardship that underpins TerraClim. And then looking at how this all overlaps with Chenin Blanc, where Chenin premiumization, where does the old vine and terroir needs meet TerraClim's capability to extend further capacity into the sector. So Chenin Blanc's intersectional IQ is really linked to Chenin Blanc's premiumization story is already supported by so much evidence and TerraClim can enhance that by providing a spatial identity, a visa for your field, your ward, and your industry connections. Chenin is South Africa's flagship white opportunity, and there are many through a category with deep old vine heritage, its strong premiumization momentum that's already been driven by a lot of the industry. The cultivar is shaped by site expression, vine age, yield management, and climate exposure, and how much more to tell the story when we start doing evidence-led storytelling, where we bring in terroir, suitability, seasonal intelligence. And when you're doing the vertical tastings, how does it shift from one season to another? What are the driving factors? What is the storytelling? So a strong platform is what we're trying to initiate through this collaboration, where we can start connecting producers, researchers, and industry bodies to start sharing insights through an intelligent platform. And the questions that we can start answering in an intelligent platform, which starts with the digital footprint of what is planted where and how does that link through to what is winning and what is the flavor profile, is to start understanding which Chenin fields are climatically similar, where are heat, wind, frost, humidity risks increasing, which wards and districts are showing the strongest seasonal signals, where are the strongest suitability opportunities, and what field level story supports premiumization and advocacy. So Chenin's top 10 winners is a study that we did in 2022 with the Chenin Blanc Association, and the question was what makes the best Chenin. So we looked at winners over multiple years, and we identified the average top 10 winners, and we geographically placed those winners, as you can see on the left hand side, and then on the right hand side a zoomed in version. So again, this is on the left hand side, hours between 25 and 30, which is an optimal photosynthetic window based on research. And we can see what does a spatial distribution look like from season to season. Then a panned in version looking at the wines, and they fall in similar climate zones. And then panned in even further, you can see a similar climate zone for these different winners. So then we transitioned that into further climate intelligence, where we did an environmental extraction for each of the fields submitted. And it was quite a process to speak to the viticulturist, to speak to the winemaker, to speak to the farm manager, to eventually get the GPS location. And that's really what differentiates and gives you the power to extract information from the data bank. So with the digital footprints of this is your field, we were able to extract the environmental parameters. And then from that, research done through South Africa Wine within TerraClim is identifying out of all 44 environmental parameters, what are the top 10 that should be considered for wine grapes? And then we can refine this even further, cultivar specific, as we build relationship and data integration with the associations. So this is an example of 2 extracted. This is an example of all the fields extracted. And then we took the data from these fields and we compared the fields with fields. So what you can see is the top 10 variables averaged. Slope, 14% in the first field, 10%, 4%, 4%, 8%, 12%, and 6%. So you can see the variables change on field level and farm level. And then it provides a suitability score. And this is what we're wanting to refine per association as a South African wine body. So we're looking at field 1. It could be also viable for Cab Sav. The next one is Sauvignon Blanc, Cab Sav. So it's also just looking at the suitability, and that's what we're wanting to refine. So all of this summarized in a table provided us with the insight that solar radiation, growing degree days, growing season temperature, and the similar summer rainfall were the 4 variables that were comparable when looking at the winners over the last period when we did the study. So it's always interesting that you expect there's so many variables that influence the winemaking process of Chenin, but yet there's still a golden thread that comes through, and it's terroir, it's terrain, it's soil, it's environment, and looking at solar radiation with specific summer growing conditions with summer rainfall are metrics that provide a very unique typicity and style that pulls through in Chenin. So really, data-driven cultivar suitability needs to be informed by understanding what to plant where, and it starts by decoding the terroir data and bringing it back down to what is driving certain cultivar expressions, what is driving winning wines, and to start understanding that provides us with a platform for premiumization as a South African wine industry. So then the Chenin Blanc Intelligence Roadmap that we are proposing as a collaborative initiative is to digitize fields, producers, and Chenin blocks specifically, to then aggregate this data into reporting formats, and then to take this further and to start looking at exploring through web access and tearing this up into admin profile for Chenin Blanc Association to start understanding where's the typicity and style coming from, where the winner's position, and that can be related back down to actionable insights for the farmer growing base. Then evaluate the suitability and the risks and opportunities. What is the climate vulnerability? Which areas are starting to show more frost? Which areas are shifting into warmer pockets? And point 5 is to scale a case study to the association intelligence. So from a reports overview, TerraClim has been disseminating reports in different formats. We've got a Villa regional report that, in partnership with Villa and Metos, goes out to as a Villa regional report via WhatsApp once a week. And you can subscribe to that. And then we've got the Climate Compass, which is initiated by South Africa Wine. And then we do bespoke reporting, which any farmer can contact us for to get a picture as to where are you in the context of your ward, your region, or your district. Then we constantly communicate what is the impact of climate change on a seasonal basis through social media and different formats. Here's an example of an 8-year baseline comparing the March conditions that we saw, looking at heat stress, and you can see there was a significant amount of heat stress around about the Swartland production area in the month of March. And then if we look at also what that distribution looks like when it's aggregated into classes from very low to very high between the 1st and the 15th of March, a lot of heat stress was experienced and deemed as heat wave hazard indication in specific areas between Stellenbosch, Swartland, Cederberg, and other areas were not as affected. And then if we look at that as well spatially, you can also see how the certain stations get hotter quicker and recover differently to other stations, and just how hot it did get between 35 and 40 degrees Celsius in specific areas up the coast from the Swartland upwards. Then forecast versus reality, we have forecast models that go out in collaboration with the Villa regional reports, and you can sign up to that, freely available. It reaches 46 regions, and further detail can be seen in the TerraClim web app. We then also compare wards, regions, districts in more detail in a tabular format, and this can be extracted for ward of origin, and then looking specifically at Durbanville Hills or Philadelphia, and then identifying what is the last season, September to January 2026, compared to the mean, and then what is the difference. So if we look at the mean temperature was 1.7 degrees warmer than the long-term mean this past season. So also looking at when was it warmer and what variable is driving the shift. And we translate this into maps and really on a regional narrative for you to start identifying what story is behind the expression of your season, as well as the expression of your terroir, and looking at it specifically from a Chenin intelligence perspective. So we have all this data, but it's not tailored to Chenin intelligence, and we can align that and release that to the association. So this is an example of a data operations interface where we've aggregated data on ward level, region, and districts. And this is really nice because you can select different wards, Slange compared to Durbanville, compared to Hemel and Arde Valley, select minimum temperature, and start identifying what variables do you want to look at, what variables do you want to compare. And this can be done specifically as a dashboard too for Chenin Blanc Association, where we look at what is the tempo of growth, and you can see our growing degree days picked up quite significantly, or the mean temperature picked up quite significantly between October and January, and then that consolidated into growing degree days. Again, you can see November, December was a lot, and the tempo for growing degree day accumulation was a lot quicker and a lot higher in Slange than what it was in Hemel and Arde, but the peak was also higher than the long-term mean. So these insights provide you with regional comparison, but as well as seasonal comparison, as well as on ward level, and further detail can be seen on farm level. And you could look at different variables. If you want to look at thresholds, hours above 35 or hours above 30, you can see which month and where in an area like Slange had more hours above 30 and which months had less hours. So you could see there was a very cool month there and there was warmer months. So these insights become really valuable when linking it back to grape insights and seasonal insights. What was the harvest? What is the sugar loading? What is the final yield? What is the acidity of the wine? So you can compare wards, districts, and regions and compare one with another. Very valuable data insights. So same farm, different outcomes is the reality that we face. So heat, cold, humidity, water levels shifting from one spot in your farm to another spot in your farm. And the aim here is microclimates are not an exception. They are the operating reality. They are the expression point. They are the story that must be told. And crops respond to local extremes in heat, cold, humidity, water availability. So when data tends to be averaged, we lose the picture and we lose the signal that's driving a seasonal response. And we want to move away from averages and focus in on the hourlies, focus in on the thresholds. And that's really where TerraClim has a defining solution that can serve agriculture. And we do that through our web app, which is a solution that provides you with insights on farm and field level. And it's a climate intelligence platform. We are now on version 4, and we keep improving with industry feedback. This is a farm management tool that's been driven by the narrative of what growers are asking for, and it's still a work in progress. And as I said, we are a climate operating system, and this is a web app just to interface our information. We are continually improving our UX and UI by user feedback. So we've got digital elevation models, we've got climate data, we've got NEVI. And our aim here is for you to digitize your farm, see your farm profile, that you can see where are the cooler blocks, the warmer blocks, every field, every block quantified and measured season on season, an organized workspace. You can collect farm level data, block level data, plant level data. So we can transition from complexity into a state of clarity, confidence from the ground up. And that is really our aim. And to capture field level data that's Chenin Blanc blocks, Chenin related clones, Chenin related rootstocks, the vine age, management practices, and in-field measurables to quantify into a digital toolkit that can move away from static maps into a living spatial database. And this is where the South African Chenin Blanc field database can serve as a vital foundation for reporting, assessing suitability, benchmarking, and encouraging engagement with producers. Each new field enhances the intelligence layer that gets aggregated up. No grower's information is exposed and shared. It's only averaged to allow for benchmarking. So it's contributing to a richer understanding within this landscape. We've also, as a project from South Africa Wine, developed an SA Wine winning app, and the aim of this was specifically created for the associations so that we can start collecting more intelligent data. So on the premise of you would enter a wine that you deem as a winning wine. So once you've entered your wine that's a winning wine in your eyes, you then collect the information for that specific field as you submit it. So it could be multiple fields, could be half a block that's gone into a specific field reports. And the aim of this is there's a admin view, which means you can manage producers, farms, fields. And then there's that's an admin view, so you can manage all of those portfolios. There's a producer view, which means you can only see your farm level data that you are submitting and you build a profile for yourself as a producer. There's an association view, so the association can see everybody that is submitting a specific wine to a specific association or a specific competition. And then there's a demo profile where you can see the temporary currently on screen, just to showcase if we had to profile a producer, you enter your password and confirm your password and set up a profile. And once you've set up a profile, you transition into an actual use case where you can log your wine data, you can enter field level data, upcoming events, and there's a lot of information that can be shared from association level to the producer. This could also be linked through other forms of notifications. So if you want to enter your wine into the competition, you submit a form, and the process of submitting that form is very much linked to once you enter a field. So you enter your wine data, and once you've entered your wine data, you can then eventually select a field. So this is also can be narrated per association as to what is the winemaking practices linked to Chenin Blanc specifically, and information that needs to be collected. So the vintage year, the number of vineyards that was used in this analysis, single vineyard, multiple vineyards. Then it's what was the winemaking information, general information that would be required once your wine is a winning wine or goes into a tasting panel. So this is very valuable information, and even if it's not necessarily shared, it's still collected and becomes valuable for further scientific research within the association. So all this wine is collected, and if it's a blend, you can collect the information, what is the clones, and this is also set up by a lot of research discussions on a scientific level in the industry through the Vineyard Forum discussion and through the Western Cape Growers Group to identify what information is actually needs to be centralized and compared across industry and across cultivars. So this information is then collected, and once you've selected all this information, your rootstock, your row direction, your type of irrigation, your pH level, all this information then gets linked to a field that you select, and you transition to the field or multiple fields. And once you've selected your fields, an environmental profile is extracted from the TerraClim database. So then there'll be 44 environmental parameters as well as climate information that's linked to that specific profile. So if we go to Noble Hill and we transition into specific sites, as just an example, and we select the site and we link it to the profile that's just been assigned. Then when tasting, then this is submitted and the statistics is fetched, and then that is generated into a report, the wine that you've logged and entered, and then that report can be sent to you via PDF, logged in your system, or submitted for the competition. The aim here is then to centralize all this information for a specific competition, all the wines, and then do this for multiple years in a centralized back-end database. And that will pull through to the suitability, which is where we start looking at how do you harvest data over it's harvesting success through data-driven agriculture, and it's starting to see where are the insights that's driving winning Chenin, specific typicity and style in Chenin, and it's starting to ask the intelligent questions per association that provides geospatial mapping. You can visualize and interactive mapping and start seeing how does that transform your future decision makings in Chenin. And a case study that shows the workflow is to start with digitizing the fields, all the Chenin fields. Then we do climate profiling, terrain profiling. So for every field that's digitized, we do an environmental extraction. Then we layer the seasonal layers on top of one another. And then we run a suitability logic, which is based on machine learning, where we look at the correlations and the driving factors. And then we package that as insights linked to specific cultivars, clones, potentially aroma profiles and environmental parameters, seasonal parameters. So here's an example of Chenin case study where we looked at all the Chenin Blanc. So this is a case study of a suitability tool that was established through a research project through South Africa Wine. So we took vines that have been planted and have a cultivar attributed to it, and currently just highlighted as the Chenin Blanc fields, and now it's going to comparing one in Stellenbosch compared to one in the Breedekloof area. And the aim here is to then look at what does the Chenin profile look like comparing two fields. So one is 4% sloped, one is 2% sloped. Then we can go into view profile and you can compare the two fields that you're comparing, which is field 1 and field 2, and you can then compare that to the average Chenin. So that's all the Chenin fields and the average environmental profile for Chenin. So having this linked to different aroma wheels and different aroma expressions would be phenomenal. So what you can see, there's a difference in mean clay depth, there's a difference in mean clay, there's a big difference in the seasonal growing degree days over the different sites. You can go update graph, see all 44 environmental parameters, and then again select your field compared to Chenin, and you can pan into specific areas. So you can see there's a big difference in minimum January temperatures, there's a difference in mean clay, mean soil. So you can see what are the variables that are outlier variables that shoot out. There's a big difference in the growing season temperature, like almost a degree accumulated over the season, becomes quite a lot in the expression, as we saw in the previous case study. So we can compare fields with fields, and then you can also draw in a field, you can add a field, and if you've got a certain amount of Chenin that you know these are winners, or this is a style that you want to repeat, you can go into that. So I've just searched for Ken Forrester, and if you select a specific site and you just do an environmental profile for the specific field, and this is not necessarily planted with anything at this point, or not, I'm not saying it's a Chenin Blanc field, this is just a demo. So you can hover in each of these variables. It tells you what it means, and then you could look at, it's a 2% slope, it's you can see what the aspect is, west facing, the soil depth and clay percentage. And then the aim is to have multiple fields, only Chenin Blanc that's been digitized within the association, and you can compare fields with fields. So now you can see the Chenin Blanc has now joined the larger Chenin Blanc pool, the fields that we've just digitized over there. And that's the aim, to start building a digital footprint that can start informing decision-making when it comes to the intelligence of Chenin Blanc specifically, and what's actually grown, when it was planted, what clone, to really start feeding into the intelligence of Chenin Blanc for the future. And that is the close-off remarks, is that we're excited to co-develop with Chenin Blanc Intelligence. And through this, our suggested next steps would be to first look at case studies, see who we are onboarding through the web app, looking at demo profiles and admin profile. We'd like to open this up for a year from today, so that the Chenin Blanc Association and Chenin Blanc's growers can start digitizing and onboarding their Chenin Blanc fields, and starting to see how can we render value in the bigger picture and pan that down to farm and field level. And we can select Stellenbosch ward possibly as a first reporting phase for Chenin Blanc and the producers within that cluster, and look at reporting cycles. So we look for feedback from you on that. And then to eventually define a Chenin suitability tool, where we can start looking at how do you aggregate certain data sets and play with the data from an advisory and technical advisory point of view. And it would be wonderful to start decoding the terroir that's linked to this beautiful aroma wheel and starting to identify where are certain typicities and styles pulled through, and let terroir do the storytelling, let the season do the storytelling, that it's underpinned by data. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your time. Appreciate it, and look forward to co-developing practical intelligence for the South African Chenin Blanc growers and the association, and look forward to our next engagement. Thank you very much.